6 months after the successful Hassan raid, Master Sergeant Sarah Chun found herself in the most dangerous position of her military career. Intelligence had identified a heavily fortified Taliban stronghold in the remote mountains near the Pakistan border, where a group of foreign fighters was planning a massive suicide bombing attack against a civilian target in Kabul. The mission to eliminate this threat would require precision, patience, and skills that pushed even the most elite soldiers to their absolute limits. Sarah had been promoted twice since the Hassan operation, recognition of not only her exceptional marksmanship, but also her growing reputation as a tactical leader. Her success had earned her a position with the Joint Special Operations Command, where she worked alongside the most elite units in the American military. The soldiers she now served with were legends in their own right, men who had conducted countless high-risk missions in the most dangerous places on Earth. The current mission had been weeks in the planning. Satellite imagery and reconnaissance reports indicated that the target compound was built into a mountainside cave system, with multiple levels and extensive defensive positions. The enemy force was estimated at between 40 and 60 fighters, many of them experienced foreign jihadists who had come to Afghanistan specifically to conduct spectacular terrorist attacks. What made this mission particularly challenging was its isolation. The compound was located in terrain so remote and dangerous that conventional military forces couldn't operate there effectively. A large-scale assault would require helicopter insertions that would alert the enemy and likely result in heavy casualties among attacking forces. Instead, military planners had developed a different approach. A small team of special operations soldiers would infiltrate the area on foot, establish observation positions, and coordinate precision strikes to eliminate the terrorist threat. Sarah's role would be to provide long-range precision fire from a concealed position over 2 kilometers from the target compound. The infiltration had taken 3 days of grueling mountain climbing through some of the most treacherous terrain in Afghanistan. Sarah and her spotter, Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, had carried over 80 pounds of equipment each, including her custom-modified M2010 sniper rifle, ammunition, communications equipment, and survival gear needed for an extended mission. The physical demands of the infiltration had been enormous, but Sarah had proven herself capable of keeping pace with the male special operations soldiers on the team. Her years of intensive training had transformed her from the slight computer science graduate who had struggled with basic military fitness into a hardened warrior capable of operating in the world's most demanding environments. Now, as dawn broke over the mountains, Sarah lay in a carefully prepared hide site carved into the rocky mountainside. Her position offered a commanding view of the entire valley below, including the target compound and all possible escape routes. The range to the primary target building was 2,347 meters, nearly 1.5 miles, an extreme distance that would challenge even the most skilled marksman. Rodriguez, crouched beside her with powerful spotting equipment, had been her partner for the past 4 months. He was a veteran of the Iraq War and one of the most experienced spotters in the special operations community. Initially skeptical about working with a female sniper, he had quickly become one of Sarah's strongest supporters after witnessing her capabilities firsthand. "Wind is steady at 8 to 10 miles per hour from the northwest," Rodriguez whispered, studying the atmospheric conditions through his spotting scope. "Temperature is rising, which will affect bullet trajectory over this distance. Are you comfortable with the shot parameters?" Sarah made minute adjustments to her rifle scope and studied the target area carefully. At over 2 kilometers, even the smallest environmental factors could affect bullet placement dramatically. Temperature, humidity, air pressure, and wind conditions all had to be calculated precisely to ensure accuracy. "I'm comfortable with the parameters," Sarah replied quietly. "Range cards are prepared for distances from 1,800 to 2,500 meters. I have clear sight lines to all primary and secondary targets." The mission plan called for Sarah to eliminate specific high-value targets within the compound, while other team members conducted close-range operations to secure intelligence materials and explosive devices. Timing would be critical, as the various elements of the mission had to be coordinated precisely to achieve maximum effectiveness. Through her rifle scope, Sarah could see signs of activity within the compound. Figures moved between buildings, some carrying weapons, others apparently engaged in routine activities. Intelligence reports indicated that the terrorist leaders typically gathered for morning prayers in the main cave entrance, providing a brief window of opportunity to eliminate multiple targets simultaneously. At 0630 hours, Sarah received the radio transmission she had been waiting for. Overwatch, this is command. All elements are in position. You are cleared to engage targets of opportunity. Mission is a go. Sarah acknowledged the transmission and began her systematic observation of the target area. Through her high-powered scope, she could identify individual faces and determine which figures matched the photographs of known terrorist leaders provided during the mission briefing. The first target appeared at 0647 hours. Ahmad al-Masri, an Egyptian bomb maker responsible for dozens of suicide attacks across Afghanistan and Pakistan, emerged from the main cave entrance and began walking toward a secondary building. The range was 2,298 meters, and the target was moving slowly across open ground. Sarah controlled her breathing and made the necessary calculations for windage and bullet drop. At this extreme range, her bullet would take nearly 3 seconds to reach the target, requiring her to aim significantly ahead of al-Masri's movement path and account for the trajectory drop caused by gravity. Target acquired, Sarah whispered to Rodriguez. Ahmad al-Masri, range 2,298 meters, moving east towards secondary building. Confirmed target identification, Rodriguez replied, studying al-Masri through his spotting scope. Wind conditions unchanged. You have a clear shot. Sarah steadied her breathing and found her natural respiratory pause, the moment between exhale and inhale when her body was most stable. She placed the crosshairs of her scope slightly ahead of al-Masri's position to account for his movement and the bullet's flight time, then applied steady pressure to the trigger. The rifle recoiled smoothly against her shoulder, and Sarah immediately chambered another round while tracking the bullet's impact through her scope. After what seemed like an eternity, but was actually less than 3 seconds, she saw al-Masri collapse immediately. The shot had been perfect, striking center mass despite the extreme range and challenging conditions. Target down, Rodriguez confirmed. Outstanding shot. Before Sarah could respond, she noticed increased activity around the compound. Other fighters were moving quickly between buildings, apparently alerted by the sound of her rifle shot echoing across the valley. The element of surprise was gone, and the mission was about to become significantly more challenging. Overwatch, this is Alpha Team, came the radio transmission from the ground assault element. We are beginning our approach to the compound. Be advised, enemy is now alerted and moving to defensive positions. Sarah identified her second target, a Saudi fighter named Abdullah bin Rashid, who intelligence reports indicated was the operational leader of the terrorist cell. He had taken cover behind a stone wall but was still partially visible through Sarah's scope. The range was slightly closer, 2,156 meters, but the target was now stationary and alert. Second target acquired, Sarah informed Rodriguez. Abdullah bin Rashid, range 2,156 meters, behind stone wall cover. Target confirmed. Wind picking up slightly, now 10 to 12 miles per hour from the northwest. Sarah made the necessary adjustments and took aim at the small portion of bin Rashid that was visible above the stone wall. This shot was even more challenging than the first because she had such a small target area to work with. A miss by even a few inches would alert bin Rashid to her position and likely cause him to disappear into the cave system. Sarah fired her second shot and watched as bin Rashid immediately collapsed behind the wall. Another perfect hit at extreme range. The terrorist leader had been eliminated before he could coordinate defensive actions or escape into the mountain caves. Over the next 45 minutes, Sarah provided continuous precision fire support as the mission unfolded. Each shot had to be carefully considered because enemy fighters were now actively searching for her position. Muzzle flash and the sound of her rifle shots provided clues to her general location. But the extreme range and mountainous terrain made it difficult for the enemy to pinpoint her exact position. Target after target fell to Sarah's precision shooting. A machine gunner trying to set up a position to engage the assault team. A fighter attempting to escape through a concealed exit with what appeared to be important documents. another terrorist leader trying to coordinate defensive actions from a supposedly safe position behind thick stone walls. What made Sarah's performance particularly remarkable was not just her accuracy, but her ability to engage multiple targets rapidly while maintaining perfect shot placement. Most sniper operations involved careful deliberation and extensive preparation for each shot. This mission required her to identify, acquire, and engage targets quickly as the tactical situation evolved. By the time the assault team had secured the compound and captured valuable intelligence materials, Sarah had fired exactly 30 rounds from her rifle, using one complete magazine of specialized long-range ammunition. Every single shot had resulted in the elimination of an enemy target, a feat that would become legendary within the special operations community. The intelligence recovered from the compound revealed the scope of the planned terrorist attack. The foreign fighters had been planning to detonate truck bombs at 3 separate locations in Kabul during a religious festival, an attack that could have killed hundreds of innocent civilians. Sarah's precision shooting had directly prevented one of the most devastating terrorist attacks in Afghanistan's history. Overwatch, this is command, came the radio transmission as the mission concluded. Outstanding performance throughout the operation. Your precision fire support was instrumental in mission success. As Sarah prepared to withdraw from her position, Rodriguez looked at her with an expression of amazement. In 20 years of military service, I have never seen shooting like that. 30 shots, 30 hits, at ranges exceeding 2 kilometers under combat conditions. That's not just exceptional marksmanship, that's legendary. Sarah acknowledged the compliment professionally, but inside, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose. She had come so far from that nervous recruit who had been deemed unfit for automatic weapons. Through dedication, training, and an unwavering commitment to excellence, she had become one of the most capable precision marksmen in the world. The extraction from the mountains took 2 more days of difficult travel, but Sarah barely noticed the physical discomfort. Her mind was already processing lessons learned from the mission and thinking about how she could continue to improve her capabilities. The successful mission had proven something important, not just about her individual skills, but about the potential for soldiers to exceed every expectation when they refused to accept limitations. Upon returning to base, Sarah learned that her performance had attracted attention at the highest levels of military command. The Mission After Action report noted that her precision shooting had prevented significant civilian casualties while enabling mission success under extremely challenging conditions. She was being recommended for one of the military's highest decorations for valor. More importantly to Sarah, she had proven something to herself. The journey from struggling recruit to elite special operations sniper had been long and difficult, filled with challenges that had tested her physical and mental limits. But each obstacle had made her stronger, more capable, and more confident in her abilities. During the awards ceremony 6 weeks later, as the medal was pinned to her uniform, Sarah thought about all the people who had helped her along the way. Master Sergeant Williams, who had taught her advanced shooting techniques during those extra training sessions. Sergeant First Class Johnson, who had given her the opportunity to prove herself with the Rangers. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who had become not just a spotter, but a trusted friend and mentor. She also thought about the soldiers whose lives had been saved by her actions, both during this mission and others. The assault team members who had returned safely to their families. The hundreds of potential civilian casualties who would never know how close they had come to tragedy. The other soldiers who had been inspired by her example to pursue their own dreams of military excellence. The ceremony concluded with Sarah being assigned to an even more elite unit, one whose missions would remain classified for decades to come. Her reputation as one of the world's most capable snipers had opened doors to opportunities she had never imagined possible. As she walked out of the ceremony hall, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. From computer programmer to Army recruit to special operations sniper, each step had required her to push beyond what anyone thought possible. The young woman who had been told she was unfit for automatic weapons had become a legend, proving that determination and dedication could overcome any obstacle. The story of Master Sergeant Sarah Chun would be told for years to come in military training schools and special operations units around the world. Her name would become synonymous with precision, professionalism, and the refusal to accept limitations. Most importantly, her example would inspire countless other soldiers to pursue their own paths of excellence, regardless of the challenges they might face. But, for Sarah, the greatest reward was not the medals or recognition. It was the knowledge that she had found her calling and had served with honor alongside the finest soldiers in the world. She had proven that with enough determination, anyone could exceed even their own expectations of what was possible. 18 months later, Staff Sergeant Sarah Chun crouched behind a rocky outcropping in the mountains of Afghanistan, her M24 sniper rifle steady against her shoulder. The morning mist was beginning to lift from the valley below, revealing the small village where intelligence reports indicated a high-value target was hiding. This was her first deployment as a qualified sniper, and everything she had learned over the past year and a half was about to be put to the ultimate test. The journey from that day at the firing range at Fort Campbell to this moment had been grueling, but transformative. Sniper School had lived up to its fearsome reputation. Of the 42 soldiers who had started the program with Sarah, only 11 had graduated. The training was designed to break students both physically and mentally, weeding out all but the most dedicated and capable. Sarah had struggled initially with some aspects of the training. The physical demands were intense, requiring soldiers to remain motionless for hours at a time while maintaining perfect shooting position. Her small frame, which had been an advantage during basic training, became a challenge when she needed to carry heavy equipment across long distances. But what she lacked in raw physical strength, she made up for with determination and intelligence. The academic portion of sniper training had been where Sarah truly excelled. Learning to read wind patterns, calculate bullet drop over extreme distances, and understand the ballistics of different ammunition types came naturally to her analytical mind. Her background in computer science helped her grasp the mathematical concepts that many of her fellow students struggled with. More importantly, Sarah had developed an almost supernatural ability to remain calm under pressure. While other students became frustrated or anxious during difficult exercises, Sarah seemed to enter a zen-like state of focus. Her instructors noticed this quality early on and began giving her increasingly challenging scenarios to test her limits. The culmination of Sniper School had been a final exercise called the stalking test. Students were required to move undetected across 2 miles of rough terrain, set up a shooting position, take 2 successful shots at targets over 600 meters away, and then escape without being spotted by instructors equipped with binoculars and radios positioned throughout the area. Sarah had completed the stalk in record time, not because she moved quickly, but because she moved efficiently. She had studied the terrain for hours beforehand, planning her route down to the smallest detail. When other students were still struggling to find suitable shooting positions, Sarah had already taken her shots and begun her withdrawal. Her first shot had been a perfect hit at 783 meters, well beyond the minimum requirement. The second shot, at an even more challenging angle, had struck within 2 inches of the target's center. The instructors watching through spotting scopes had been impressed not just by her accuracy, but by the speed and precision with which she had executed the entire exercise. After graduating from Sniper School, Sarah had been assigned to the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, one of the Army's most elite units. The Rangers were known for their rigorous selection standards and demanding training program. Being accepted into the unit as a sniper was an honor that very few soldiers ever achieved. Her new squad leader, Sergeant First Class Marcus Johnson, was a veteran of 3 previous deployments and one of the most respected snipers in the regiment. Johnson had been skeptical when he learned that his new team member was a woman, particularly one who looked like she should be teaching college courses rather than hunting enemy combatants in mountain warfare. "Chun, I don't care what you did in Sniper School," Johnson had told her during their first meeting. "This is the real world, and out here, mistakes get people killed. You're going to have to prove yourself all over again." Sarah understood his concern. The Rangers had a reputation to maintain, and every member of the unit had to be able to perform at the highest level. She was determined to show Johnson and the rest of her team that she belonged among their ranks. The proof had come during their pre-deployment training at Fort Benning. The exercise was designed to simulate the conditions they would face in Afghanistan, including long-range precision shooting in mountainous terrain. Sarah's performance had been flawless, consistently hitting targets at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters under various weather conditions. More importantly, she had demonstrated the tactical awareness and decision-making skills that separated good shooters from exceptional snipers. During one exercise, she had identified and engaged multiple targets while simultaneously directing the movements of friendly forces, all while maintaining her concealed position. Johnson's attitude towards Sarah began to change after that training cycle. He started including her in planning sessions and asking for her input on tactical situations. By the time they deployed to Afghanistan, she had earned the respect of every member of the team. Now, lying in position overlooking the village, Sarah reviewed the intelligence briefing one more time in her mind. The target was Ahmed Hassan, a Taliban commander responsible for organizing attacks against coalition forces throughout the province. Hassan was believed to be meeting with local tribal leaders to plan a coordinated assault on a nearby forward operating base. Sarah's mission was to provide overwatch for a special operations team that would be conducting a raid on Hassan's compound. Her position, nearly 1,200 meters from the target building, would allow her to cover multiple escape routes and provide precision fire support if needed. The plan called for the assault team to move in just before dawn, when Hassan would be most likely to be sleeping and his security would be at its lowest alertness level. Sarah had been in position since midnight, using night vision equipment to study the compound and identify potential threats. Through her rifle scope, Sarah could see two guards patrolling the perimeter of the compound. They appeared relaxed, probably assuming that the remote location provided adequate security. She made mental notes of their patrol pattern and timing, information that would be crucial if the situation escalated. At 0530 hours, Sarah heard the first whispered radio transmission from the assault team leader. Overwatch, this is Alpha Team. We are beginning our approach. Request status on sentries. Sarah keyed her radio microphone softly. Alpha Team, Overwatch. 2 sentries visible, eastern and northern perimeter. Patrol pattern is consistent with previous observations. No change in alert status. Copy, Overwatch. Maintain surveillance. Sarah watched through her scope as the assault team moved like shadows through the pre-dawn darkness. Their movement was so smooth and coordinated that even from her elevated position, she could barely detect their approach. These were the best soldiers in the world, and she felt honored to be supporting their mission. Everything was proceeding according to plan until Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through her scope, she could see additional figures moving in the buildings surrounding the main compound. These weren't part of the intelligence briefing. Hassan had more security than anyone had realized. Alpha Team, Overwatch, Sarah whispered urgently into her radio. Be advised, I have multiple unknown contacts in buildings surrounding the primary target. Count at least 6 additional personnel, possibly more. The team leader's voice came back immediately. Overwatch, can you confirm hostile intent? Sarah adjusted her scope's magnification and studied the figures more carefully. They were armed with AK-47 rifles and were positioning themselves at windows and doorways overlooking the compound entrance. This was clearly a security detail preparing for trouble. Alpha Team, confirmed hostile intent. Unknown contacts are armed and positioning for defensive action. Recommend abort and reassess. There was a long pause before the team leader responded. Overwatch, we are committed to the mission. Hassan is confirmed on target, and this may be our only opportunity. Request you provide precision fire support as needed. Sarah understood the decision. Hassan had been responsible for the deaths of dozens of coalition soldiers and civilians. Intelligence indicated he was planning something major, possibly a coordinated attack that could result in massive casualties. The mission had to succeed. Copy, Alpha Team. Overwatch is standing by for fire support. Sarah began systematically identifying and prioritizing targets. She counted at least 8 enemy fighters in addition to the 2 perimeter guards. If the assault team was discovered, they would be heavily outnumbered and in serious danger. The assault began at exactly 0545 hours. Sarah watched through her scope as the team moved swiftly toward the main building. For the first few minutes, everything went according to plan. The team neutralized the perimeter guards silently and breached the compound without alerting the additional security forces. Then, everything went wrong. A dog began barking somewhere in the compound, and Sarah saw muzzle flashes erupting from several of the surrounding buildings. The additional security forces had spotted the assault team and were opening fire. Overwatch, Alpha Team is taking heavy fire from multiple positions. Request immediate fire support. This was the moment Sarah had trained for, but nothing could have prepared her for the intensity of real combat. Through her scope, she could see the assault team members taking cover behind low walls and vehicles, pinned down by accurate rifle fire from the surrounding buildings. Sarah's training took over. She identified the most dangerous threat first, an enemy fighter positioned in a second-story window with a clear line of sight to most of the assault team's position. The range was 1,247 meters, well within her capabilities but challenging given the wind conditions and the fact that she would be firing downhill. Sarah controlled her breathing, made minute adjustments to her scope, and squeezed the trigger. Through her scope, she saw the enemy fighter drop instantly. One down. Good shot, Overwatch. Continue engaging targets of opportunity. Sarah shifted to her next target, another fighter positioned behind a stone wall. This shot was more difficult because only the fighter's head and shoulders were visible. At over 1,200 meters, it was an extremely challenging shot, even under perfect conditions. Sarah steadied her breathing and focused entirely on the crosshairs in her scope. The world around her seemed to slow down as she made the microscopic adjustments needed for the shot. She squeezed the trigger, and, again, the target dropped immediately. Outstanding shooting, Overwatch. Alpha Team is moving to secondary positions. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah provided continuous fire support for the assault team. Each shot had to be perfect because the friendly forces and enemy fighters were sometimes separated by only a few meters. There was no room for error. Shot after shot, Sarah engaged enemy targets with deadly precision. An enemy fighter trying to flank the assault team from the east. Another attempting to set up a machine gun position on a rooftop. Each time, her bullets found their mark with surgical accuracy. The situation was unlike anything she had experienced in training. The stress was enormous, knowing that the lives of her fellow soldiers depended on her ability to make perfect shots under combat conditions. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, Sarah found herself entering that same zone of calm focus that had served her so well during training. By the time the assault team had secured Hassan and was ready to withdraw, Sarah had engaged 12 different targets. Every shot had been successful, and, most importantly, no friendly forces had been injured during the firefight. Overwatch, Alpha Team is ready for extraction. Outstanding support throughout the operation. As Sarah prepared to withdraw from her position, she reflected on what had just happened. She had fired exactly 30 rounds, one full magazine, and had eliminated 12 enemy fighters who posed immediate threats to the assault team. More significantly, her actions had helped ensure that Hassan was captured alive, providing valuable intelligence about future Taliban operations. The success of the mission would reverb through the intelligence community. Hassan's capture led to the identification and disruption of a terrorist network that had been responsible for dozens of attacks. Sarah's precision shooting had made it possible to complete an incredibly dangerous mission without losing a single American soldier. But, perhaps most importantly, Sarah had proven something to herself and to her fellow Rangers. She had demonstrated that her success at Fort Campbell and in sniper school hadn't been a fluke. Under the most challenging conditions imaginable, when lives depended on her abilities, she had performed flawlessly. As she made her way back to the extraction point, Sarah thought about how far she had come from that nervous recruit who had struggled with basic marksmanship. The journey had been long and difficult, filled with moments of doubt and frustration. But every challenge had made her stronger and more capable. The radio crackled with congratulations from various units who had monitored the mission. Sarah acknowledged the praise professionally, but, inside, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had found her calling, and she was exactly where she belonged. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the training grounds of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, as 23-year-old Sarah Chun adjusted her grip on the M4 carbine. The weapon felt heavy in her small hands, and she could feel the eyes of her drill sergeant burning into her back. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had made it clear from day one that he didn't think women belonged in combat roles, especially not someone as petite as Sarah. "Chun, you're up next," Rodriguez barked, his voice carrying across the firing range like a whip crack. "Let's see if you can hit the broadside of a barn this time." Sarah stepped up to the firing line, her heart pounding in her chest. Around her, the other recruits snickered quietly. Most of them were big, muscular men who had grown up hunting with their fathers or had military family backgrounds. Sarah was different. She was a computer science graduate from San Francisco who had never held a gun before joining the Army 6 months ago. The qualification test was simple in theory, but brutal in practice. Each soldier had to demonstrate proficiency with their assigned weapon in both semi-automatic and full automatic modes. They would be tested on accuracy, speed, and weapon control under various conditions. Those who failed would be reassigned to non-combat roles, effectively ending their dreams of serving on the front lines. Sarah had passed every other aspect of her training with flying colors. She was faster than most of her male counterparts in physical fitness tests, scored higher on written exams, and had shown exceptional leadership skills during field exercises. But marksmanship had always been her weakness. The recoil of the automatic weapons threw off her small frame, and she struggled to maintain accuracy when firing in full auto mode. "Whenever you're ready, Chun," Rodriguez said, checking his stopwatch. "Remember, you need to hit at least 40 out of 50 targets in the allotted time. Miss more than 10, and you're out." Sarah nodded, trying to calm her breathing. She had practiced this scenario hundreds of times over the past few weeks, staying late at the range when others had gone to dinner. Her bunkmates thought she was obsessed, but Sarah knew this was her last chance to prove herself. The targets were arranged at various distances, from 25 meters to 300 meters. Some were stationary, others moved on mechanical tracks. The test was designed to simulate real combat conditions where soldiers might face multiple enemies at different ranges and positions. "Begin," Rodriguez shouted. Sarah raised her rifle and took aim at the first target, a human-shaped silhouette 25 meters away. She squeezed the trigger gently, just as she had been taught. The bullet struck the target's center mass. Good start. She moved to the next target, then the next, working her way through the course methodically. Her shots were precise and controlled, each one finding its mark. The other recruits had stopped their quiet conversations and were now watching intently. Sarah's accuracy was remarkable, especially considering her previous struggles. But then came the moment she had been dreading. The automated voice over the loudspeaker announced the transition to full automatic mode. Candidates will now engage multiple targets using burst fire and sustained automatic fire. Time limit, 90 seconds. Sarah switched her weapon to full auto and took a deep breath. In previous attempts, this was where everything fell apart. The sustained recoil would throw off her aim, and she would spray bullets wildly, missing most of her targets. She raised the rifle and squeezed the trigger. The weapon bucked in her hands as it fired its 3-round burst. To her surprise, all 3 bullets struck the target. She had been working with the base's veteran marksmanship instructor, Master Sergeant Williams, who had taught her a different technique for managing recoil. "Plant your feet wider," Williams had told her during their private training sessions. "Don't fight the recoil, work with it. Let the rifle settle between bursts, and trust your muscle memory." Sarah continued engaging targets, her confidence growing with each successful hit. She was in a zone now, her breathing steady, her movements fluid. The rifle felt like an extension of her body rather than a foreign object she was struggling to control. Around the 50-second mark, something unexpected happened. The range safety officer announced a simulated emergency scenario. Multiple hostile contacts, southwest quadrant. Engage at will with sustained automatic fire. This wasn't part of the standard qualification. It was an advanced test usually reserved for special forces candidates. Sarah could see Rodriguez's surprised expression from the corner of her eye. Someone had apparently decided to see how she would handle a more challenging situation. Without hesitation, Sarah pivoted toward the southwest section of the range where pop-up targets began appearing rapidly. These targets were designed to simulate enemies emerging from cover, requiring quick target acquisition and engagement. She switched to sustained automatic fire mode, something she had never attempted successfully in training. The key was trigger control. Instead of holding down the trigger and letting the rifle spray wildly, Sarah used controlled bursts, squeezing and releasing the trigger in rhythm. Each burst was 3 to 5 rounds, allowing her to maintain accuracy while delivering effective fire. Target after target fell to her precise shooting. The pop-ups appeared faster and at more challenging angles, but Sarah adapted quickly. She had found her rhythm, and the rifle was performing exactly as she wanted it to. Her small stature, which had been seen as a disadvantage, actually helped her maintain stability and control. The timer reached 90 seconds, and the range fell silent. Sarah lowered her rifle, her ears ringing from the gunfire. She had expended exactly one full magazine of 30 rounds, and she wasn't sure how many targets she had hit. The automated scoring system would need a few moments to calculate the results. Rodriguez walked over to the scoring station, his expression unreadable. Sarah had never seen him look so serious. The other recruits gathered around, equally curious about the results. "Well, Chun," Rodriguez said finally, looking at the computer screen. "I've got good news and bad news." Sarah's heart sank. She was sure she had failed again. "The bad news is that you're not qualified for standard automatic weapons operation," Rodriguez continued. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. 6 months of grueling training, all for nothing. "The good news," Rodriguez said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "is that you just scored a perfect 50 out of 50 targets. In fact, according to this system, you hit 57 targets total, including the 7 bonus targets in the emergency scenario." The range erupted in cheers from the other recruits. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Not only had she passed, but she had achieved something that very few soldiers ever accomplished. "Furthermore," Rodriguez added, "your sustained automatic fire demonstration was so impressive that I'm recommending you for advanced marksmanship training. That last exercise you just completed? Most Special Forces candidates don't score that high." Sarah felt a mixture of relief and pride washing over her. All those extra hours at the range, all the doubt and frustration, had been worth it. She had not only proven herself capable, but had exceeded every expectation. Master Sergeant Williams approached her as the crowd dispersed. "Outstanding work, soldier. I told you that technique would pay off. How does it feel to be the highest-scoring recruit in this cycle?" Sarah was still processing everything that had happened. "Honestly, Sergeant, it feels surreal. I was sure I was going to wash out." "Sometimes the best soldiers are the ones who have to work hardest for it," Williams replied. "Your dedication to improvement is exactly what we need in our armed forces." "That recommendation for advanced training?" I seconded it. "You're going to sniper school, Chun." Sniper school. Sarah had never even considered it as a possibility. Snipers were elite soldiers, the best of the best. The idea that she, someone who had struggled with basic marksmanship just months ago, might become a sniper seemed impossible. "Are you serious, Sergeant?" she asked. "Dead serious. Your performance today showed something special. It wasn't just your accuracy, though that was impressive. It was your composure under pressure and your ability to adapt to changing conditions. Those are the qualities we look for in our precision marksmen." As Sarah walked back to the barracks that evening, she reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a software engineer living in a comfortable apartment in San Francisco. She had a good job, a steady income, and a predictable future. But something had been missing. She felt like she wasn't making a real difference in the world. The decision to join the Army had shocked her family and friends. Her parents, both professors at UC Berkeley, couldn't understand why their daughter would give up a promising career in technology to become a soldier. Her friends thought she was going through some kind of quarter-life crisis. But Sarah knew better. She had always felt a calling to serve something bigger than herself. Growing up, she had been inspired by stories of her grandfather, who had served in the Pacific during World War II. He had rarely talked about his experiences, but when he did, Sarah could see the pride in his eyes. He had been part of something important, something that mattered. Now, lying in her bunk that night, Sarah thought about her grandfather and wondered what he would think of her performance today. She liked to imagine he would be proud. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and eventually, she would face the ultimate test of her skills and training. But for tonight, she was content knowing that she had proven something important to herself and to everyone who had doubted her. The road ahead would be long and difficult. Sniper school was notoriously challenging, with a high washout rate. Even experienced infantry soldiers often failed to complete the program. But Sarah felt ready for whatever came next. She had learned something important about herself today. When she set her mind to something, she could achieve more than anyone expected, including herself. Outside, the Kentucky night was quiet except for the distant sound of training exercises from other parts of the base. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind was racing with possibilities. She thought about the advanced training that awaited her, the skills she would learn, and the missions she might one day undertake. She had no way of knowing that her journey was just beginning, or that the skills she was developing would soon be tested in ways she never could have imagined. The quiet confidence she had gained today would serve her well in the challenges to come, when her ability to remain calm under pressure would mean the difference between life and death, not just for herself, but for the soldiers who would depend on her. For now, though, Sarah Chun was simply a young soldier who had exceeded every expectation and earned her place among the Army's best. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged.